Hello, and thank you very much for joining our Boxcryptor for Teams webinar today. My name is Sophie, and I am an account manager at Boxcryptor. In this webinar, we show you the optimal way to set up Boxcryptor company and enterprise. And in doing so, we give you an in-depth overview of the Boxcryptor team features. I'm sorry. After the demo, I will answer all of your questions. So let's start. First off, I would like to provide some general tips concerning the safety of your data. Please do not use your productive data for testing purposes. It would be the best to use some dummy files for your first tests to avoid any possible data loss. Make sure that your cloud or your server is accessible, and also be aware that encrypting and migrating your company's data could take a day or two, depending on how much data you handle. I would suggest to migrate your data after work or on a weekend to avoid possible sync conflicts. Having this in mind, let's start to set up Boxcryptor for your team. The first step would be to get to know the functionality of the administration panel and especially the Boxcryptor policies. So therefore you log into boxcryptor.com/app using your admin account. And when you log into Boxcryptor, this is what you see. At first, you are in the Manage Account section. Here you can find all the information about your own account. First of all, you can change your email address, and you can also choose which notifications you would like to receive. Then here under security, you can change your password, or you can also enable two-factor authentication. Here it is important to note that when you enable two-factor authentication here, it is only active for your own account. If you want to activate it for your whole company, you can do this in the policies. I will show you where that is later on. Then under groups, you can create, delete groups, you can add members or remove members to groups, you can manage the group ownership, and so on. As you can see, currently, we do not have any groups. We will create some later. Then you can review and manage your devices and web sessions here, and you can remove the ones you no longer trust. For example, if a device has been stolen or lost, then you can just simply remove it here. You can go to the Boxcryptor help pages here. You can also browse our forum for answers, or you can directly contact our support. We do recommend using this support ticket because it will arrive pre-prioritized at our support team. So we know that you're a company or enterprise admin, and we will help you as quickly as possible. So we do highly recommend using this support ticket. And finally, under the advanced session, you can export your keys or delete your account if you wish so. Then we go to the Manage Organization part. Here you can find all the information about your team account. First off, you have the option to change your organization name. And the next thing you can do is set the master key. We do highly recommend setting up the master key because it allows you to reset your users' passwords, and you can also decrypt all the files in your organization and manage groups with this master key. You can imagine that the master key is like a janitor's key for an office building. The janitor can enter all the offices and rooms with the janitor's key. And in this situation, the Boxcryptor team plan is like the office building and the admin is the janitor. And with the master key, the admin can access all the data using this master key, even if he does not actually have access to the files, even if the person who encrypted the files did not give the admin the permission. He can still access the files with a master key. To set it up, all you need is your current password. And then you have to set up a master key password. So it is very, very important to store this master key password somewhere safely and so that you don't lose it, because if you lose this master key password, you will not be able to access the files or to reset passwords. So it's very, very important to keep this master key password at a very safe place. Later in this demo, I will also show you how to work with this master key. Now, as you can see, it is currently not active. When I add the users, you will see that the master key will become active for them. Now, here you have this user section where you can add users. We will do this later on as well. We will also add some groups in a second. The difference between this group section and the group section we saw under Manage Account is that here you can see all the groups in the organization, even if you're not a member of these groups yourself. When you go to Manage Account, you will only see the groups that you are a member of. And here you can find all the groups in your organization. Now, let's go to the policies. We do have a number of policies that you can find here. I always recommend just looking at all of them and decide which one suits your needs the best. As I said before, here you can also enable the two-factor authentication for your company. You can, for example, allow locations. For example, you can set up that only Dropbox can be added as a location in Boxcryptor. You can set up a minimum password length, for example, and you can restrict sign-in from or to specific countries and IP addresses. There are a bunch of options, and every company, every organization has different needs. So you can choose which one suits your needs best. However, there are two policies that we do recommend for everyone. The first one is the disallow account reset policy. Because if a user forgets his password, he might try to reset the password on their own. However, when he does that with Boxcryptor, that is a bad idea because he would lose access to all of his encrypted data, and the account will be removed from all groups. And that's because resetting the account will result in newly created encryption keys for this account. So you set up the master key, and you as the admin can reset the passwords for your users, so he does not need to do it on their own. So just set up this policy to make sure that none of your users will be able to delete his keys and therefore access to the encrypted data. With all policies, you can choose if you want to apply it to everyone or if you want to exclude or select certain users. This policy we definitely want to apply to everyone. The next policy that I highly do recommend creating is the disallow permissions modification. That means that if you set this up, only you as the admin can set up the permissions for folders and files. If this policy is not activated, all of your users could go ahead and give permission to other users, other groups, and you can set up this policy to prevent this from happening. Now, in this case, we will exclude ourselves because if we wouldn't do this, even we could not set up permissions. So we're going to exclude ourselves. Okay, now we have set up the most important policies. So we can move ahead to activities. Here you can see all of the activities taken by your users. You can see when and where users signed in, for example. You can see password changes. You can also follow creation of groups and policies. And you can see when and why a user was added or removed. You also have the option to look for certain users, for certain activities, and you can also set up a time frame in which you want to look for something specific. Now, the last thing we have here in the web app is the plan. Here you can just see which plan you are currently using. You can enter a key if you want to here. If you are not quite sure which license is the right one for you, you can of course always contact us at sales@boxcryptor.com and we will be happy to find the right plan for you. Okay, now that we have checked out the web app, we can go ahead and create all the groups that we will want to use in our team plan. Now we just go to the group section here and then we will create the groups that we will want to use in this example. I will want to have a team group where I will add every user that I will later add to the organization. I will also have a management group for the management team. And I want to add a sales group as well for the sales team. As you can see, I do not add the users yet. I will do this later on. For now, we just create the empty groups. Okay, and now we have all the groups we want to use in this example. Of course, you can create as many groups as you like and as you think are necessary for you. Now that we have done this, the next step is to think carefully about the folder structure you would like to use and encrypt. Then you create the new empty folder structure and we will not put any data in or share it via our cloud provider yet. Now at this point, a lot of clients ask me, is it really necessary to create a new folder structure? Because of course, a lot of people already have an existing folder structure in their cloud or in their network share, for example. And yeah, I have to say, yes, it is really important to create a new folder structure because it might, of course, seem as a lot of work at first. And honestly, of course, it does take a little bit of time to set everything up, but it will save you so much time, work, and issues in the long run. Because encrypting the existing folder structure will likely cause you a lot of trouble and make it much more confusing for you. So we do recommend setting it up right once so that you won't have any issues in the future. So when you download the Boxcryptor software, you get this virtual Boxcryptor drive. And Boxcryptor auto-detects cloud providers. So here you can see I have my SharePoint already added, I have OneDrive already added, and the Dropbox. So for this example today, I will use the Dropbox to show you how to set up everything, but the procedure would be the exact same for any cloud provider or network share. So we go to the Dropbox, and you can see here there are already some folders right here. This one is not encrypted. I can tell by the symbol, it's just a little check mark. And these two are encrypted. You can tell by the little green square. And the person who encrypted these files also activated the file name encryption. So these Asian letters show that the names of these folders is encrypted. So I, as someone who does not have permission to these folders, cannot read the folder names. But we will just ignore them and set up our own folder structure. Now, when I create a new folder, Boxcryptor asks me if I want to encrypt this folder, and yes, I do. And I will just go ahead and call this folder company. And it's synchronizing right now. And in a second, it will also have this green square showing that this folder is now encrypted. In this parent folder, I will create some subfolders. One will be a team folder. I will have everyone have access to this folder. I will also create a management folder that will contain files that should only be accessed by the management. And I will also create a folder for our sales team. And as you can see right here, creating this subfolders, I was not asked if I want to encrypt these files because the parent folder is encrypted. That means that the subfolders and files that you create in here will also automatically be encrypted. So I will not have to worry about encryption when the parent folder is encrypted. And now we will go on and grant all necessary Boxcryptor permissions to these empty folders. We will decide which groups that we created will have access to which folder. Now, of course, the parent folder should be accessible to anyone. So we will right click on the folder, go to Boxcryptor Manage Permissions, and add the team group to this folder. It is now changing the permissions. Here we go. And as you can see, not only the encryption is inherited to the subfolders, but also the permissions. So the management folder also now has the team group and the permissions. However, we do not want this in this case because we only want the management group to have access to this folder. So we just go ahead, remove team, and add management. Okay. We will do the same for sales because we only want the sales team to have access to the sales folder. And for the team folder, we won't have to do anything because we want everyone to have access to the team folder, so we do not change the permissions here. You can see that you can also add single users. However, if you do that, if you add a single user, the user's public key will be added to each file and cause a complete synchronization of all data within the selected folder over again. When you remove the user from the permissions, it will also trigger a complete synchronization. And depending on how many files you have in a folder, this can take some time. However, when you add or remove someone from a group, the changes are done on your machine and on our servers. So since the permissions themselves do not change, synchronization is not necessary and access changes are instant. So we highly recommend working with groups and not with single users. You can even create groups that only have one user in them. That's no problem at all. Okay, so now the folder is encrypted, the permissions are set. Now we can move our unencrypted data to these folders. I do have some test files here that I will go ahead and copy and move to the folders. Now, as you can see, the files are encrypted because the parent folder is encrypted, and the permissions are also inherited from the parent folder. Here it's the same. This has the sales group and the permissions. When you compare this to the Dropbox, when you go directly to your Dropbox drive, it looks like this. You also have the folders, you have a folder key, and when you click on a file, you can see on a folder, you can see that the files have the ending .bc. That means that they are encrypted. Now, if I would try to open these files directly from Dropbox, I can't. Now that I have Boxcryptor running, what will happen is that the Boxcryptor drive automatically opens so that I can access the file from the Boxcryptor drive. If I wouldn't be logged into Boxcryptor right now, and if I would try to access these files directly in Dropbox, I could not access them. But through the Boxcryptor drive, I can just open the files and it opened on my other window. I can just go ahead and work with them, save them, and work with them like with regular files. I don't even feel the encryption happening in the background at all. Good. Now that the files are ready to be worked on, we can now add our users. So therefore we go to the web app again and add our users. Now there are 4 different options to add new users. The simplest option is to add users manually. And this is okay if you have like 20 users or up to 30, 40 users. You can just add them manually without any problems. It doesn't take so long. But of course, when you have a high number of users, adding each user one by one takes a little bit of time. So what you can also do is integrate Boxcryptor with LDAP or Dropbox for Business. You can do this here. Just set up the user directory. That is an option. With the enterprise plan, you can also use account capture. That means that when a user logs in with your company domain, they are automatically added to your team plan. So if your domain would be, for example, blah, blah, blah at company.com, and someone would log in with this domain, they would automatically be added to your team plan. And lastly, what you can also do with the enterprise plan is to set up single sign-on. You can add Boxcryptor to your existing identity provider, such as Active Directory or OneLogin. And then when you add users to your identity provider, they are automatically added to your team plan when they log into Boxcryptor for the very first time. I will now show you how to add users manually. Therefore, you just click here on the users, go to add, enter the email address, the first name, and the last name. Now, when you add a user and he does not have an account yet at Boxcryptor, you create the keys for them. You will receive a temporary password that you will give to the user. I will just copy and paste it into a notepad so that I won't forget the password and that I can give it later on to the user that I just added. You can also add users that already have a Boxcryptor account. They will simply receive an email with a link where they can click on to join your organization. I will add one more user. And this user doesn't exist yet as well, so I will create the keys for him, copy the temporary password, and provide it to the user later on. Paste it here. Okay, so the last thing we have to do now on the Boxcryptor side is to add the users we just invited to the groups that we have already created. Now, as I said before, I want every user to be part of the team group, so I will add all of them. Now here I have to enter my master key password. And now I can add my users. And I will also add user 2 as well. Done. Now you can see we're all part of the group team. For management, I will only add user 1. And for sales, I will only add user 2. Oh, I should click add. Okay, now we are completely done with the setup on the Boxcryptor side. Now the last thing you have to do is to grant physical access to the data through your cloud provider. Because so far we have only granted the permissions through Boxcryptor, but the permissions also have to be granted through your cloud provider or network share. So you will have to go to your Dropbox. In this example, we use Dropbox, so I have to go here. And here I will have to grant the permissions. Now you also have several options here. You can either give the same permissions you have through Boxcryptor, you can create the same groups, in Dropbox and give the exact same permissions to the folders in Dropbox the way you did in Boxcryptor. What you can also do is that you give everyone the permission to this folder and to the subfolders as well. You don't put in a lot of work with the permissions here. On this side, you just grant everyone the permissions to each folder because you have set up the permissions through Boxcryptor. So only the people who should have access to the files. The third thing you can do is that you manage the permissions through Dropbox and give everyone permission to everything through Boxcryptor. That would also be an option. Now, in this example, I have set up the permissions already through Boxcryptor, so I won't have to do a lot here. I would just give everyone the permissions in Dropbox, and then the permissions are already handled through Boxcryptor. Our support team recommends to do the same permissions in Dropbox as in Boxcryptor, just to be on the very, very safe side. However, it is not completely necessary to do that. Okay, and then when you have set up the permissions through your cloud provider, you're done. Everyone can start working with the files, sharing files. Then you're done and can work with your encrypted files and have a good feeling that your files are safe in your cloud. Now, what I would like to do after the demo is show you how what it looks like for user 1 if you would log in right now. So I'm going to sign out as the admin and I will log in as user 1. And I will here have to enter this temporary password that my administrator gave to me. And then I can go ahead and change it into my own password. And here I go. This is the Dropbox, this is the company folder, and I, as user 1, I am part of the team group and of the management group. That means that I can just go ahead, open these files, work with the files, just do whatever, save them, no problem at all. However, I am not part of the sales group. That means I cannot access these files. When I try to, I get this error notification. I cannot access these files. Here, another error notification. I cannot open those files. What you can see right now is that even though I don't have the permission, I can still read the file names. If you have very, very sensitive information in the file names and don't want people without permission to read them, you can enable file name encryption. I will show you what it looks like. I will do this in the management folder. You can right click on the file and enable file name encryption. And as you can see, nothing changes here in the Boxcryptor drive. You can still read the file name because, of course, you still want to work with the files through the Boxcryptor drive. And if all the names were encrypted, you couldn't read them and you wouldn't know which file was what. So this still stays the same. However, when you go directly to the Dropbox and to the management folder, you can see that this file has these random Asian letters, and I do not know the file name when I look at it. So this is how the file name encryption works. Now, let's say I want to have my own folder as user one. I want to save my own company data in here, but I don't want to share it with anyone. I will just use it for myself. So I create this folder and put some files in there. And as you can see, they are encrypted, and when I check the permissions, only user one has the permission. And what you can see here also is that we set up this policy earlier that only the admin can change permissions. And as you can see, it works because I, as user one, cannot add groups or add users or share this file with anyone. So, okay, so now what happens when those are very, very important business files and user one leaves the company and doesn't share this data with anyone? I will show you what you can do. I will sign out as user one and sign back in as the admin now. So I, as the admin, I see the folder, I see the files, but I can't open them right now because I do not have the permission for these files. Only user one has the permission. Also, error notification, I cannot access the files. But I did set up my master key. So I go to the Boxcryptor settings, go to the account, and I unlock the master key. I have to enter the master key password here. And now I have access to all the files in my company cloud. Now that I've unlocked the master key, I can go ahead, open the files. I can now access everything. And what I can also do is that now I change the permissions and add myself to the permissions so that I will have access to the files even when I don't have the master key enabled. Okay. Awesome. Now I also have permissions to all of these files. Okay, that is one feature of the master key. The other feature is the password reset. To do that, you go to the web app again, go to users, and then you pick the user from the list that wants his password reset. So here you can choose reset password now with the master key enabled. And do you really want to do it? Yes, I do. And I will have to copy this temporary password again. And then I can provide this temporary password to the user. I will show you this. I will now log in as user one. I will now have to enter this temporary password. And I can go ahead and change it again. and I will have access to all of my files again. So even though I lost my password, nothing bad happened. I can still access all of my files and nothing is lost. Okay, so thank you very, very much for listening and joining today. I hope it was very helpful for you. Have a great day, and I hope to talk to you again soon. Thank you and bye.